Hello and welcome to the video for DiyMate, my task list and conversion app. This app has many features including data persistence via an SQL database and shake to clear using the accelerometer sensors in the phone. I'm now going to give a quick overview of the main features of the app. The first thing to launch is the splash screen, and then you see the list view that is generated by the SQL database, which I'll get onto in a minute. It is possible to add a task such as this example. You then confirm it and it is placed onto the bottom of the list view, which is now scrollable as there's enough items in the list. You can add another task and it checks and you cannot add an empty task to the database. You then cancel this. You can remove a task by clicking on it and it then removes this task from the list view as well as removing it from the database. If you shake the phone, it removes all notes, gives you the pop-up to remove all notes from the phone. It then gives you a pop-up to say you've got no reminders, would you like to add one? So you can add another one here. In this example, we're hanging a picture onto the wall. If you swipe to the right, you get to the second fragment, which is the conversion fragment, which allows for many common conversions in measurement and weight. In this example, we're changing 4.5 kilometers to miles, and we're told it's the same as 2.8 miles. This works for all of the different examples in the spinner, and the layout is such that it's easy to use with one hand, as would be the case. Now close the app and we can see the persistent notification that the app generates while it's running, which allows users to quickly add a new task to the database without having to launch the app first. This notification cannot be closed as it's persistent and can be launched from anywhere within the phone. And here's another example of launching the same notification from within another app. It launches straight into the correct activity, which is the add note activity within the app. This next clip just shows briefly the fact that the app still works in horizontal view and allows for full functionality within the app. For this part of the video, I'm going to be going over the main elements of the SQL database that forms the back end of my application. For this, I made use of the SQLite database functions inside Android Studio. In here, in the public onCreate, we see my create table command, which is to create a table lists with an ID and a notes column. This ID column is the primary key and is automatically generated by SQLite. The other interesting functions which are called from other Java files include the public void of insert notes, which you pass the data, which is the notes you want to add, and it attempts to put them in by using the SQL command, and then it ends the transaction. Other functions include the getAllNotes, which returns a string of all of the notes that are currently inside the database. You can see here the SQL function that it calls is select all from the table. It does this by creating a cursor and then moving it through all of the returned queries, adding them to the notes array, and then finally it returns the notes array for use at a later date. The delete note function escapes the string that's passed, so it's passed the string of notes. It then escapes this to avoid attacks such as SQL injection. It then passes this through to the query and then closes. The delete all notes function is similar, except for it doesn't take anything as a parameter because it's removing all notes from the database. This is called when the user shakes their phone to signify they want to remove the rest of the notes. If we now go to the tab 1 Java, which is where the data is displayed, you see that instead of using onCreated, we use onActivityCreated. This is so that the SQL database is read when the activity, the main activity, is called rather than the tab 1. This is due to some things like r.id not working inside the activity inside a fragment. So we call a new instance of our database helper, and then we say if notes.is empty, so if there's nothing in the notes, which is the getAllNotes function that I talked about earlier, then we call our empty popup, which is this void here, which basically just asks the user if they want to add anything now as there's none in the database. The list adapter is then called the array adapter and is passed my simple list item with the notes array. This fragment is a list fragment provided by the Android support v4. The empty pop-up, as I talked about earlier, builds a new alert dialog, sets the title, sets the text, and then it starts the add note activity if the user wants to add a note at that time. The on item click is where you click the item to remove it. So you click it, it builds a new alert dialog, and upon pressing the confirm button, it calls database helper delete note with the string, and the string is the position that is currently passed inside the list. So it calls that, and then it calls the current activity again in order to refresh the page view. This is the code that I use to detect shakes when the user shakes the phone. It calls itself as a sensor event listener and calls the X, Y and Z sensors. It then sets a list of parameters up here that can be changed depending on the strength of the shake that you want them to use. It then, if the elapsed time is less than the max shake direction, it resets, and that means that if the user shakes the phone once or just moves it once and then leaves it to rest, it doesn't trigger. If a shake is triggered, it calls the on shake, which is down here, and then this function is then overridden in main-activity.java with the code that I use to then remove all the lists from the database. This is the code that lets me set a persistent notification in the Android system tray. I build it up here using the notification builder. I set auto cancel to false. This means it doesn't go away when the user clicks on the notification. I set ongoing to true, which means they can't swipe it out. The priority is -2, meaning it's grouped as the lowest priority in the app, meaning it doesn't get pushed ahead of better, more important notifications such as messages. It then, when it's clicked, is then past the intent to start the new add task function. The last thing to look at are the custom Expresso tests that I've written to test my application. In this example, we convert centimetres to inch. It clicks on the container and swipes left to get to the correct fragment. It then waits while the data is loaded, inputs a number 2 into the text box, clicks the spinner, clicks inch to centimetres, clicks the button, and then checks that the base unit matches the correct string, which it should do. For testing the first fragment, for the add new task test, it clicks on action favourites, sleeps, inputs the note test notes, and then it clicks the confirm button, waits while it's all loaded, and then it checks that the list has 2 inputs. There is already 1 in the database, so it should be 2 when that runs. For the adding a null task, it does the same thing, however, it doesn't add any string into the keyboard. It then clicks the confirm button, and then it confirms that the toast of cannot add empty task is displayed properly. To get the length of the list, it uses a matcher as